Middle school teachers of Reddit. What is the most awkward cringy thing you've seen a student do? I used to teach middle school before graduating to teach high school. While I was in middle school, I had one awkward student in my last period that took a liking to me. He would stay after school every day just to hang out with me. He was always asking how he could help out after class, like cleaning the whiteboard, putting chairs up, that sort of thing. We would usually talk while he did this. One day he surprised me by saying, "I bet you'd be a really good dad. I think it would be awesome if you were my dad." Think of all the things we could do. I kind of laughed it off, because middle schoolers say a lot of weird things. A couple of weeks go by. Same thing. He's staying after school to hang out with me when he says, "You know you have a conference with my mom tomorrow." "Yeah, of course. She's really cute. You'll like her." What exclamation point. Maybe you guys can go out on a date. Needless to say, that was an awkward conference. AWW. I actually feel quite sorry for the kid. I had a kid once ask if I could be her mother. She was only 7, so I suppose it's less of an awkward situation than a middle schooler. But she broke my heart, as I knew that her parents always got home late and she'd go home to an empty house at such a young age. I did feel for the kid. His dad had left them when he was a baby and had no male role models. I was flattered to be the male role model he wanted. He was very socially awkward. Recently I've been finding condom wrappers in the desks of my 6th graders. Apparently the boys have been using them to masturbate in the bathrooms. The most cringy part about it was a girl student pointed to the desk and said, "You might want to check this out." But I don't even know what them little boys be doing with those. It's not like they can use them yet. Especially as a first-year teacher, this has been one of the most awkward days of my job. I had a 7th grade girl raise her hand and ask me to come to her desk. When I leaned over, she asked quietly if she could go to the bathroom and gestured at her lap and muttered something I didn't hear. Assuming that she started her period, fortunately in dark black pants, I let her leave, of course. When she comes back, she stands next to her chair for the rest of the lecture and leaves quietly at the bell. Next class comes in, and, while I'm straightening up and standing in the hallway, the student who was assigned the same seat as that girl grabs some paper towels and starts cleaning up. There is a huge puddle in the chair and on the floor. It suddenly occurs to me, the dense teacher, that this poor girl had peed her pants. In 7th grade, I told the boy that someone spilled dirty water and tried to get him to stop cleaning it up. But he was like, "Nope, already done." He had just mopped up some girl's pee. I told him to wash his hands in case the tea was sticky and let it go. I asked the girl the next day if everything was okay. She was so amazed that nobody even noticed. Thank goodness for unobservant teachers and students that day. But watching that boy clean up pee has haunted me. He was almost done when I realized what was going on. But still. Don't let it haunt you. Pee is just pee. I've had to clean it up as a librarian, along with blood and vomit. It happens. Is cleaning up blood and vomit a common thing for librarians? I never realized libraries were so hardcore. This school year, one of my students bet another student something like $20 to lick his ballsack. The boy agreed, and decided that after a sweaty day in gym class in the locker room would be the best time to do it, which he did. They also had a third boy there to film it on their phone, of course. So now they are all suspended pending potential charges for making and distributing child pornography. As a result, our district attorney came and gave an assembly presentation of laws pertaining to sexting and underage sex to all of our kids. I think half of them started shitting bricks when they were told that the could potentially gain access to their past Snapchats. could potentially gain access to their past Snapchats. That's a good bluff. I agree. I am pretty sure he was trying to say that if anyone screen captures it, then it is saved somewhere and they can use metadata to find it and subpoena it. But it sounded more like all their photos and videos are being secretly stored somewhere. There was a student, kinda flamboyant, nice kid and super social. Too social for a lot of middle schoolers. He wrote an erotic story that included himself and 3 other students. It was found when he dropped a page of it in English class and one of the students saw their name and started reading it. It was very, very detailed. That worst part was that each of the students who were written about and their parents were informed and shown the story, and somehow it got out. The English teacher at the time said it was a good read and had no grammatical errors. The English teacher at the time said it was a good read and had no grammatical errors. An erotica that got an English teacher seal of approval? That kid's writing is above 99% of erotica out there. Get him on Amazon. Did the English teacher also add, can't say the same about 50 Shades of Grey? Ah, yes, the classic erotic friend fiction stunt. Tina Belcher is a pro. A 6th grade boy called another boy gay. That boy responded by saying, I'm not gay. If I was gay I'd be touching your balls right now. I watched one of my students break apart an eraser, you know, the big pink kind, and then proceed to put all the pieces in her mouth and fire them out like a gun at the boy sitting next to her. When I asked her why, she told me it was because she wanted to be his friend. Kids. I think she misunderstood the advice about using a rubber with your crush. I'm 23 years old and if a classmate did this to me in a college class I would probably end up being their friend. The most common cringe-inducing activity is the Naruto run. Every year there are still 4-5 boys that exclusively travel through the halls with their arms raised behind them. Second place is when kids say a joke and no one hears them or they don't pick up the social cue that no one thought it was funny so they say it like 10 more times. Hey, that's a spicy meatball. No response. Hey, that's a spicy meatball. 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 Meanwhile I'm going insane at my desk with my teacher ears that hear everything. Someone for the love of God please answer him. I've made it part of my job as 5th grade teacher to inform my kids on how to make a joke. Part of it is that you can't repeat it, because jokes have to be a surprise. So now they police each other on it to the point that other teachers have told me my kids shut down the let's say the same shit over and over cycle in other rooms. At Disneyland I was at a stoplight and 2 girls in cosplay were crossing the street with a Naruto run. One of the girls was holding a pizza box in her hands while she Naruto ran. Unfortunately, she was not holding the side of the box that opens. So as she ran her pizza spilled out. Oh God, can confirm both of these. It's uncomfortable to watch, listen to. IDK what it is. When I was a student I could never figure out how the teacher heard everything. Now when I'm in a classroom I pray I don't hear things so I don't have to deal with it. It's uncomfortable for everyone when a substitute has to take disciplinary action or whatever. This isn't one instance, it's just daily. My students draw dicks on everything. It's almost like in the movie Superbad. I legit have a collection of cock drawings ranging from stick figures to scientific journal quality. I was out for personal reasons for 3 days. When I came back the kids had drawn cocks on the back of all our computers with Sharpies. It's like they are obsessed. And before you ask I save the pictures for evidence in case I need to use them in a parent-teacher meeting. That and they make me laugh really hard. I used to teach high school art. Penises drawn everywhere. Penises sculpted out of clay or even the little charcoal erasers that are very malleable. My co-worker told me that he squashed the problem by holding a drawing of one up to the class and saying, "Is this a self-portrait? Because if so, there may be some health issues, or something of that nature." My last first semester to teach art, I had a wild class with many freshman boys who drew penises on everything. And I did what my co-worker said. I held up the paper and said, "Hey, look, I've seen that you guys draw a lot of these. I think maybe you might have a fascination of some sort. Or are you practicing self-portraiture? If so, then I paused for dramatic effect. I think you might need to see a doctor." The other kids in class took it from there on my behalf and roasted the penis drawers. I didn't see any more that year. The next year, I went on to teach English at a nice, fancy charter school and I had seniors. I had to leave class for an art meeting and there had been a sub in my room for that time. I came back to a very creative penis drawn on paper and pinned to my word wall. It was an elephant whose head was a penis and scrotum. In that same class, someone also once left a condom in a chair, out of the wrapper. In high school, after we did clay sculptures in art class, we collected all the leftover clay, made a supersized dick as accurately as we could, then slapped each other in the face with it. After that we fixed it up, included a hook and fired it. We then mounted it in each other lockers until someone diced to suck it and they spat it out and it broke. Oh my god. I can't stop laughing. If my teacher told our class that as a kid, I guarantee you we would have doubled down and started drawing the most disgusting possible penises with weird bumps, protrusions and shit on the dicks. We were some arsehole kids, but it was hilarious. One girl made a fake boyfriend using some Arabic movie star as the profile pic. When her friends found out, it was one epic cat fight in the yard. She went through all the effort of creating fake Facebook canvas of her talking to herself. She actually logged into 2 separate accounts at the same time to create convincing conversation to show her friends. My wife works as a 7th grade Ella teacher. There is a kid in her school that everyone is afraid of, including teachers. He has very morbid thoughts and has no issues sharing them with everyone. When classmates share how their weekend went, he discusses how he loves killing people in his video games and how good he is at doing it, etc. A few weeks ago on a Monday, said student returns my wife a loaner pen that was given out. "Thank you," she says. To which he replies, "No thank you. I've slept with it under my pillow all weekend because it smells like you." He has since been assigned a new Ella teacher that is actually across the hall, and since then he had to get his desk moved in that classroom because he would be caught staring into my wife's classroom for the entire class. Bonus fact: they had parent-teacher conferences and his single-parent father is equally as sketched out by his own son. I had a kid as a student once that could be a little bit scary. He was walking around once with a pencil threatening to stab other kids. He would get into rages where he seemed to just lose control. I tried to be understanding with him. His family was in a stressful situation as far as I could tell because of his younger brother having a severe learning disability. Perhaps he was angry at a lack of attention. I made it a point to be nice and understanding with him to show him that he is a valuable person, even if he may not feel that way at home. I used to teach 7th grade science in a school with fairly low-level students, so reading skills weren't particularly sharp. As we're about to get into the differences between living and non-living things, it was time to cover some new terminology, so I had a student read a paragraph from the textbook aloud to the class. It went something like this: "There are all kinds of orgasms in the world. Big orgasms, small orgasms, even microscopic orgasms. Some orgasms have fur, some orgasms have scales, and even you are an orgasm. Not a single student knew any different, or at least didn't make a big deal out of it. But I was about to die with laughter. I went into the hallway to compose myself, then read the second paragraph myself. An organism is a living thing, which can be defined as. Funny that none of the kids caught on. A kid did something similar in my 7th grade class and we were all crying with laughter. The poor kid never lived it down. 7th grade science. A girl kept reading orgasm and I was dying of laughter and none of the kids understood what was funny, so I said, let me explain. An initiatory. The teacher yells no. My wife is a 4th grade teacher and she tells me stories all the time, but this one almost made me throw up. She was teaching and started to smell shit and thought, alright, someone is just farting. No biggie. After a few minutes the kids all started making faces cause they smelled it too. Finally one kid caught my wife's attention and had shit in his hands while sitting at his desk. Turned out he obviously farted and shit his pants but decided to stick his hand in his pants because he didn't believe what happened and didn't know what to do with it cause he was clearly embarrassed. My wife had to call the custodian to clean up the area. Let me tell you, the shit these custodians do on a daily basis is incredible. They the real heroes. Turned out he obviously farted and shit his pants. Happens to the best of us. A Jewish friend of mine with no Reddit account. I was teaching, and it wasn't even about the Holocaust. I actually don't remember what it was about. The kid raised his hand and asked randomly, "You're Jewish, right?" And I said, "Yes." "Why?" And then he said, "Oh wow, I bet you're glad that Hitler's dead." My sister often tells the story of when she was 14/15. She was sitting with a group of random people from her class and it happened to come up in conversation that one of the kids was Jewish. One of the girls in the group said, "Oh, you're Jewish? Are you looking forward to Holocaust?" "Oh shit, I meant Hanukkah. Oh my god, I am so sorry, I meant Hanukkah." Not me, but my mom is a middle school choir teacher, and one day I was visiting her class to see her kids sing and bring her a coffee. After I give my mom her coffee, I go and sit down in an empty chair in the middle of all her kids just to listen to them sing and do warm-ups. The girl on my right and I say hello to each other, and I glance over to the left to see the girl sitting on the other side of me staring me down. Before I could say anything, she blinks and says, "I have lung problems," and then turns to face the front of the classroom again. That is, to this day, one of the strangest things that has ever happened to me. Taught as an assistant. During an English verbal exam, students must ask the proctor a question. One boy asked if I liked him. In Japanese, it could be both, "Do you consider me a worthwhile human being?" and "Would you bang?" Sort of like erring on the side of caution, so as not to call a potentially depressed student worthless. I went with yes. He fixed the problem right away by asking me why, and I promptly told him because I didn't hate him. He got the point. Edit. The test was in English. Students had to ask me a question in English, but the word "like" translates with all of the same various connotations we have in English, and was explained to students in the same way. It was also a special, non-standard public school, for students who couldn't fit in with the rigidity of standard Japanese schools. I wasn't read into specific backgrounds for individual students, but I was just told that many students were mentally weak, and should always be given positivity, yes, but rather than no, but. Would you bang me? Yes. Why? Because I don't hate you. That'd be enough to convince me. TBH, it's pretty much the same situation in English when you're a kid in school. You like Harold? ? Sure. Why not? He's my science partner. Guys, Susie likes Harold. Teasing. Mocking. Laughter. No, not like. I just meant I didn't hate him or anything. Which is how you learn to say there's no right answer to that question. Saved me in the 8th grade, and it was sort of gratifying to see the girls, who they asked me if I liked, face go from a panic to relief when I said that. When I was a teacher, a Japanese student asking if my white boyfriend had big penis. When I was a student, girl who would make up ridiculous stories for attention. She claimed that someone tried to shoot her once and a bird flew in front and took the bullet for her. Weird stuff like that. Watch her have lived some amazing life full of divine intervention only for no one to believe her stories. Kills herself. We had a new teacher in middle school, and I won't lie, he was fine. He was young and very handsome, and the girls were all hitting puberty at that time. One girl took it to an extreme though. She would scream at him, "Will you marry me, Mr. Clark? You're so fucking sexy, you're so hot, Mr. Clark, kiss me." It was so incredibly awkward. I felt so badly for him. Come to think of it, actually that girl ended up transferring schools, so there must have been some serious talk going on with her parents about it. That poor teacher must have been terrified, lol. Edit. Okay you guys, I guess Mr. Clark is a pretty common teacher name. You can stop asking me if I went to your school, lol. I remember that period. There was this teacher that every guy in the school has a crush on at some point. And it didn't help that everyone was horny AF all the time. Being in the peak of puberty. Long story short, some very awkward things happened that year. Edit. Added long story along in comments. You were warned. Had a fine Chinese teacher too. He was extremely strict, but teenage hormones know no bounds, so everyone still had a crush on him. The girls' bathrooms had writings on the stalls that said "Marry me Sir W" and stuff like that. He always got love letters by the end of semesters. I honestly miss that teacher. He scared the shit out of me, but he was as good a teacher as he was good looking. Back when I taught high school, I was pretty young when I began. I don't remember exactly now, but I was probably 22 or 23, so not much older than the students. One girl I had that first year early on would start talking with friends in the middle of class and generally interrupting things, but otherwise got good grades. So one day she starts acting out in class, so I call her a troublemaker and reassign her a seat right in front of my desk so she can't be as disruptive. That turned out to be a mistake, because she started leaving me explicit notes signed "Your little troublemaker." She'd just slip them onto my desk when I was momentarily distracted by writing on the board or talking with a student in the back or whatever. She even slipped one of her school photos in with notes on the back. At first I kept all this stuff and wrote up mini incident reports with the date I got them just to cover my ass. But then I was talking with a friend about it, and he convinced me to throw all of it in the wood stove. Still to this day I'm not sure if she was an awkward kid with a crush or if she was a vindictive kid who thought it was funny to terrorize me. Student would sit in the back and mutter Kamehameha, sometimes for 20 minutes. He also insisted on being called Goku. We labeled his behavior chart to start at baby Goku and advance to Super Saiyan level 4. He never made it past teenage Goku. I mean, by that time he'd already defeated the Red Ribbon Army and saved the world from King Piccolo. That's quite a lot for a middle schooler to accomplish in a year, Lol. I remember being in maybe last year of middle or first of high school. We were in gym class, in the swimming pool, and we're having a splash walk kind of thing. One kid puts his hands by his side like Goku and starts to incredibly slowly shout "Kaira, me," etc. Finally releases his HAAA, and tries to splash, and the saddest little splash comes out. Everyone lost it. Well, there was that time that a 7th grade boy decided to put his open mouth on my office window and swirl his tongue around, my knock style. Best thing you can do is not react. Just sigh deeply, walk up, and calmly ask if they're done yet. Thank them for licking years worth of accumulated dirt and residual bird shit off the window. Ask if they want to do the other windows too while they're at it. I was teaching 7th grade math. My kids had all done really well on a recent test and I asked them for suggestions for a class reward. Kids starting shouting out ideas. Chips, pizza, candy out of the back of the room. A kid who normally is pretty quiet yells out, "Let's get bonus." The class loses it. They all start laughing while the kid who yelled is repeating, "I meant donuts. I meant to say donuts." It took a good 10 minutes to get control of the room back. Kid was pretty embarrassed, but I did my duty and managed not to laugh. Stopped taking reward suggestions after that. Edit. Deleted an errant. Mea culpa. That kid is going to be reliving that moment every night as he tries to fall asleep for the next 70 years. Can relate. Tried to make a joke in middle school that immensely backfired and I don't go a few days without thinking about it in my adult life. I don't see why boners and donuts can't live in harmony together. I mean, as long as they aren't jelly or custard, right? The donuts even have happy little holes in the middle that can just slide right on there and everything. Worked at an all-girls middle school in Korea for 3 years. Saw a girl proceed to walk out the bathroom with her used feminine pad and proceed to slap the girl that was bullying her. Not just once but multiple times. It was pretty messy. Witnessed a hilariously cringy moment last Friday while supervising an 8th grade lunch. I watched as a student, let's call her Mia, arrived to the table she normally sits at and set her tray down. In that moment there was a discussion that another boy had already taken that spot and he had just run up to grab something. Instantly tears fill her eyes and she snatches her tray to head across the lunchroom to a different table. Mia gets about 5 steps away when a boy, chat, from the table goes, "Mia, wait." My heart filled as I imagined some act of kindness. Some reminder that 8th graders are actual human. Mia turns with a Medusa-like glare and shouts what Chad points to her tray and asks, "Are you going to drink your milk? Get out of here with that bullshit, bitch. I'll get that milk though." I only listen to old school hip hop. My favorite group is NWA. I bet you've never even heard of them. This was said to me. I had to stop myself from laughing in this kid's face. Source, a maam actual teacher. Someone had done this to me about Nirvana. Kid, when I was your age, Kurt Cobain was at the height of his fame. I had a girl from the year below me tell me that she worked as a babysitter for Kurt Cobain while he was on tour. She was 14 years old and the year was 2002. During Black History Month, we were assigned to create a PowerPoint document on an historical black person. Then, we all had to present them on a projector to the class. Around halfway through the presentations is a kid named Travis who was assigned Malcolm X. He loads up his presentation on the projector, and the title page features a chimpanzee. Odd. But maybe there is something to it. Nope. Straight-faced, he delivered every page of his entire presentation replete with photos of baboons, monkeys, bananas, and culminating in a photo of a gorilla and a large animated gun pointed at its head going bang like in cartoons. This, of course, being the assassination of X. I watched this teacher the entire time. She turned redder and redder as he went on. Finally, at the slide with the gun and gorilla, she exploded on him. I don't remember exactly what she said, but this usually demure teacher went into a rage, yanking him into the hall and presumably to the office. If you're wondering, yes, there was a black student, and no, it was not Travis. It's been so long that I don't recall her reaction, but it must have been awful. I can't for the life of me understand why the teacher let him go on for so long. I can't for the life of me understand why the teacher let him go on for so long. Letting him dig his own hole, I assume. Turning detention into suspension into explosion with every slide. I had a friend that was exploded back in high school. Took forever to hose the gym down. There was this kid that nobody really talked to. He was talkative, but every time he tried to start a conversation, it seemed like he was just white noise to other students. Usually I would be sympathetic, but he was a little too weird. He was massive for a middle schooler and was already growing lots of stubble that he refused to shave. And every day he would walk into class, turn on Russian polka at full volume, and do an Eastern European dance. Every day, without fail. Not only this, but he exclusively spoke in a Russian accent, and everyone knew he was not Russian whatsoever. He also wore a massive fur hat every day, even when it was not cold. He's gone now, but I wonder what's going to happen to him in high school. A sub, who was a pretty younger woman, said that when she was walking up and down the rows checking on student work, she noticed a boy was playing with himself. The principal met with the mother and the actual teacher of the class to discuss it. The mother insisted that her son could not have possibly been doing that because his penis was far too small to be able to be seen. Toward 6th grade, had a boy come up to me and swipe his hand up my neck while saying infinity. My naive teacher felt uncomfortable after that. He just touched my neck and asked what infinity means. The amount of dicks you've sucked, I'm not working there anymore. Young man, it is impossible to suck infinity dicks. If this was true, I'd be sucking a dick right now. So who looks silly now? Not true. You could do one every other day forever. That's still infinity, but not always. Not a teacher, but during the shop class, our teacher asked the class if we knew how to glaze wood. A boy jokingly whispered to his friend, "Skeet on it, haha." An innocent girl who heard the boy's joke raised her hand, was called on, and proudly answered, "Skeet on it," in a class that was 80-90% male. She was the only one who didn't get what was so funny. Full disclosure, this happened in a freshman class, but it was definitely awkward. Edit. To skeet on something is slang meaning to ejaculate on it. I would definitely lose my shit at that as a freshman. Hell, I'd probably laugh at it now. That's hilarious. You learn quickly in these classes that yes, what the kids say is funny, but after having them interrupt the class several times a day to make jokes, it gets old super fast. It can still be funny, but you will much rather laugh about it later with other teachers. God, do teachers make fun of kids behind their backs? I'll be honest, she's not that innocent if she's trying to benefit from cheating off of other people's answers. A child ever bombed in from behind and kissed me on the cheek while I was sitting. That was super strange. Another child's pants ended up falling all the way off while he was in his chair. His bare ass was on the seat. I looked at him and raised my eyebrows, turned around, and the next time I glanced at him his pants were back on. My wife taught in a middle school. She's pretty petite, 5'2", so she could blend in with the student populace if she wasn't careful. Walking in the hall one day, a 7th grade boy walks by her and goes, "Damn girl, that ass is looking fine." It probably was. When she wheeled around to face him and he saw her touch his badge, he just about shit himself. She didn't get him in trouble BC. It was such an insane circumstance that she felt a little bad for him and how mortified he was. She was just kind of like, I don't need to tell you how bad you just messed up, right? He was just pleadingly saying, I am so sorry. She let him off with a, you really need to respect women more than that. When I myself was in 8th grade, we were in history class and being monstrous to the teacher, talking over her, not paying attention, etc. She finally loses her patience and flips out on us. She said something along the lines of, what can I do to make you guys pay attention? Everyone in my stories speaks in caps lock. To which my friend Logan replied, you can take off your pants. I have a boy this year who regularly does things that ultimately just results in him embarrassing himself to get attention. This includes what his class refers to as duck noises, somewhere between a loud forced exhale and a grunt. He regularly and loudly yells at other students for looking at him. Everything is funny, like head back, loud, literally falling out of his seat onto the floor laughing funny, even if it's just that someone's coat fell off its hook. Perhaps the worst, he lay on the floor and pretended to be a chicken. Arms flailing, loud squawking, some semblance of an attempt at the worm but sideways. He tried to do a flip in the schoolyard one day and landed on his arm. I had him next, and he spent the first 10 minutes of my class dramatically wailing my shoulder as if he was attempting, badly, to imitate a woman in labor. Had mom come pick him up. He came back the next day with a sling and claimed his shoulder was dislocated, but I saw his doing flips in the yard again that afternoon. Edited to at, the duck noises came from this Duck Kingdom game he and some friends developed at recess a few months ago. He does them 100% voluntarily because those friends who are in on the kingdom think it's funny. They all occasionally do it too. But he takes it to extremes because any attention is good attention to him. Yes, this child does have a LD. He's diagnosed ADHD/PH. I spoke of highlights here, but he also has a tendency to get up and wander more often than stay at his desk and never gets work done because he's too busy getting up to go bother people that he's been intentionally sat away from and or calling to them across the room. His classroom teacher, his mom, and I all think there's more going on though than just this, and he's been back in at his doctor multiple times this school year as they try to get on top of it. I've got to be honest here, this child sounds like he should be in special classes. Not trying to be mean, is it normal to have children act like that and not have some condition? He is diagnosed ADHD/PH. That said, he's a sweet kid and all. He really is. But I get nothing done with his class because he is just so disruptive. I waste so much time just dealing with this kid. Not a teacher but a story from when I was in middle school. We were reading a love story or something, I don't really remember, but the teacher asked, what is a non-physical way to show someone you love them? One of my classmates just yelled smooth jazz and the classroom went silent. Why, that is actually quite funny. I would imagine my whole class would have laughed. Not a teacher, but this happened during 8th grade. Some girl, a known class disruptor, brought a vibrator to school. It was one of the ones that had buttons for sounds, and during math class, one of the buttons was accidentally pushed while inside her bag. Suddenly, everyone heard OHH. Yes, followed by a little jingle sound inside the classroom. She got in big trouble after that. Edit. She actually took it out of her backpack and bothered people by showing it, when the teacher's back was turned to. First day back at school after Christmas this year, I was talking with my year 7 form class about how their Christmas went. I mentioned at one point that I was still feeling tired from the early start, and one girl piped up with, I'm so tired too. Sir, I wish you could take me back to bed. I know she just meant that she wanted to go back to sleep, but fuck, that was the most cringy thing I've ever encountered. Just lucky that no one else realized what she said. I was walking across the playground and coming towards me in the opposite direction was a female pupil. She saw me walking towards her and would not stop staring at me until she was just a few feet away. At that point she screamed, "No. Don't do it, sir. I'm a virgin." The most unsettling part was when she screamed virgin and her face was just inches from mine. Edit disclaimer. She was joking. Her sense of humor is just a little left field. One kid went to other people and farted, then said something like a person's name. I heard that one while everyone would slowly go away. Not so awkward, but definitely cringe-worthy. Walking out of the library during lunch on Thursday, I see group of 7th grade boys standing in a circle dropping something over and over again laughing. As I pass them I see it sounds like a phone being dropped. I assume it's just a phone case. I stop. Then as I'm standing there the boy next to me drops his phone from shoulder height. I'm talking newer iPhone Samsung phones. Me. What are you guys doing? He tells me it's a new app Timmy, 8th grader, showed us. When you drop the phone the app makes a funny noise. I gave them the look and said I think someone might be trolling you and went on my way. I had one of the boys in class later that day. He explained they discovered you could just whack the phone with your hand and it would make the funny sound. I haven't had the chance to find the app or discuss it with Timmy yet, but I'm looking forward to it. Edit. Spelling. Edit 2. I think this app brain web page, is the one they were using. Not a teacher but in 7th grade there was this couple who had sex in the bathroom at least 3x in a semester. When they finally got caught they were both suspended. The school board's idea to fix the problem was to lock the bathroom doors. We never knew who had the keys and therefore had to walk to the 6th grade wing just to go pee. The only thing worse than middle schoolers themselves have to be middle school administrators. This heavy-set girl, very sweet, but not particularly popular, would come in every day with some sort of drama. Her online boyfriend hadn't chatted with her. She was having difficulty choosing which online boy she liked better, etc. The most awkward was when she claimed she had a real-world boyfriend at school. She couldn't figure out why he only talked to her online and never in public. I couldn't figure out if the relationship was a figment of her imagination or if he was too embarrassed to admit to his friends at school he was talking to her online. In either case, it was sad. My mom was a middle school teacher. Early on, before I was born, my mom was pregnant for the first time. A girl student went up to mom at the time and said, "I'm beating you," because the student already had one kid and was on her second pregnancy. Not a teacher, but I've been saving this story for years. 5th grade. We're almost at the end of the year, so to practice for middle school, all of the teachers had organized like a little block scheduling drill. We're going from class to class and just playing some game or etc. So we're in this one class doing like scroll charades. We each say a thing and the person next to it has to mime it out. So I said dumpster diving and so the kid next to me does like a rolling somersault. It was pretty sick. As he is standing up like a boss he just says eatin' booty. Pause. Then his eyes go real wide as he realized what he said. Rest of the class has no idea. Next kid in line is like, "How do you even do that?" and proceeds to mime out eating something with a fork and a disgusted expression. The teacher's face was pure horror. Fast forward like 12 years and what he said suddenly clicked and I just started laughing. Last year I had a girl, let's call her A, get called to the counselor's office. When she returns she's bawling her eyes out and won't talk to anyone. Later in the day half the girls are crying and no one knows why. Finally they break and tell us that A's dad has just committed suicide and that A wants to do the same thing. Everyone is sad. They start a fund for her family. The counselors give talks on suicide prevention. There was even a vigil planned. Long story short, on Friday the girl misses the bus and who comes to pick her up but her very much alive father. At that point her friends went ballistic. Then her dad and some other teachers had to save her from the 10 girls trying to fight her. She went to another school while things blew over. When she came back they were friends again. Middle schoolers are weird. I wonder at what point did this girl think, oh I fucked up, this lie is way too big. My first thought was, why was she called to the counselor to begin with? Not a teacher. While I was in school these 2 kids were dating and eventually broke up. In order to win his woman back, the young man snuck into the office, hijacked a PA system, and announced his love for her and how he feels so hopeless without her. I didn't really like him, because he was typically a douche, but when I saw him in class after his suspension, I decided to ask how he was doing and show a little sympathy for his feels. He responded, nearly in tears, that during his suspension for his guerrilla radio stunt, his woman started dating some other guy. A couple years ago I hijacked the PA system. Using a wireless connection I had access to the PA system from the outside the school, and rickrolled the school, and to this day I wonder if the school ever found out who rickrolled the school. I'm a substitute teacher and I work in a middle school that my mom teaches at. Every single day I go to work there I observe the weirdest stuff. I once had to call my mom to come to the class I was teaching because I honestly couldn't figure out what to do with a boy who stood up and just pissed himself. Randomly just stood up, said hey, friends, countrymen, then peed in his jeans. Apparently he was dared to do it for $30 bucks. Where do they get this money, Jesus dart? I couldn't stop laughing. I had to hide my face behind a binder or something while I got a hold of myself. I wasn't laughing because it was funny exactly, more because I felt like it was such a demented thing to do. I was borderline horrified. Moral of the story is I'm a 22-year-old senior in college who is super glad I work with my mom because kids are weird as fuck. Between all of the clucking, ninja running, and awkward doe eyes at each other all the damn time, I don't even know anymore. Not the teacher but the student. A group of kids were talking to our teacher about one of the student being ill. I start telling them my sister is ill too. Her what's it called is bothering her. Oh yeah, her clitoris. Yeah, I meant sinus infection. No idea how I got those two confused. I still remember her wide-eyed confused face. Haha. She just turned around to go do something else and I didn't even realize what I had said until a few years later when I actually really learned what a clitoris was. Not a teacher, but a lunch lady. I have had 6th grade girls talk in line about how, at least they are not pregnant yet. Not the teacher, but in 7th grade a boy drew crude stick figure porn on his desk with a pencil and proceeded to jerk off to it, in class. At the time he was dating the teacher's daughter, just to top it all off. Offspring of a middle school special ed teacher here. My mom loves this story, so she had turned around to help a student, and in that brief time a commotion started brewing because Tommy, for unknown reasons, started licking the floor and he was refusing to stop. Some kids explained they were saying mind your own business. Some kids were telling Tommy to get up off the floor. Tommy was absolutely refusing to stop. One kid got particularly upset and shouted, full volume, I hope you catch something from the floor, and at which point my mom turned away and investigated. Edit. That's pretty much of the end of the story. My mom just asked all the kids what was going on and told Tommy to get off the floor and take a seat. And apparently everyone just went on with their lives. Early stage Kevin, Who's the dumbest person you've ever met? AskReddit webpage. This one kid was just attention starved. Once he pissed on the outside wall of a building. But not on the side of the building. On the front, like 10 feet from the front door of the classroom. But the best one was about 5 minutes left in the school day. I walk into his class to talk to the classroom teacher. He looks super uncomfortable and asks me to give him a pass to use the bathroom. I tell him I'm not the teacher for that class and he'd have to ask his classroom teacher. Apparently, he thought it would be hilarious if he ripped a loud fart in class. And, you guessed it, he sharted on himself. I had a 6th grade student who dressed like kid president. Suit jacket, dress shirt, tie. One day, he took off his suit jacket, took out some deodorant, and applied the deodorant to his still clothed armpits. At the end of 6th form UK ages 16-18, every class made a leavers video to play at our final assembly, whilst most of the classes did heartwarming compilations of us all as friends, or a funny mockumentary. The best one class could come up with was a gossip video. The whole video was just them harassing popular teachers with questions about their personal and sex lives, if they had crushes on the other teachers, what were their opinions of them, etc. The teachers just looked very uncomfortable and answered their questions as diffusingly as possible. They didn't bother to edit the footage very well. So most of the video is these 4 students running around the hallways laughing. It was the last video of the assembly, and throughout it the hall was silent. The teachers featured were trying very hard not to make eye contact and the happy mood quickly went out the window. The guy running the equipment could be heard asking if he should turn the video off, but the headmaster didn't want to embarrass the students who made it. Not a teacher, but in middle school we had a kid that was notorious for being a compulsive masturbator. He was in class one time and I guess he had to get it on from under the desk. The teacher noticed what he was doing and went up to him and started yelling, "Carlos, what are you doing?" Carlos proceeded to bust a nut on her shoes. Not a teacher, but this one time a kid in my class gave a whole presentation about where to find diamond in Minecraft. Informative, but cringy as hell. As a teacher, these types of topics are usually reserved for students who have difficulty, or are unwilling, to complete a presentation in front of the class. Speaking skills are difficult to teach, particularly in middle school, because the social pressures are beginning to be realized. Everyone has some sort of expertise, hobby, or interest, though, so I have assigned open topic presentations so students have much more confidence during their speech. Honestly, it is far more interesting for me than to just assign a topic and grade 100 plus similar speeches. I've had students present how to beat Halo 3 on legendary difficulty, how best to color your hair without damaging it, why Star Trek is better than Star Wars, to name a few. Sure, it may be a bit cringe-worthy at times, but the public speaking experience is invaluable, and kids get to share the things they most care about during an experience which, admittedly, is one of the most difficult skills to practice and demonstrate in school. How did the Star Trek, Star Wars kid take getting an F on his assignment? I have a framed picture of Yoda behind my desk, so I think he took this as a challenge accepted type of assignment. I didn't let on that I actually enjoy Star Trek as well. A whole presentation? Is there more to it now than dig down until you find a deep canyon mine and find diamonds? It's actually a bit more nuanced. There's a limit to how many diamonds you can find in a chunk, and there are certain ways to maximize diamonds stone mined. Not a teacher, but I was a student at the time. My school had a new young male English teacher, all girls school. Someone found out that he was a model and my friend found his modeling profile online which listed his mobile phone number and that he was an underwear model. Some of the girls in my grade started texting him asking about his underwear modeling. He left soon after that. I teach 8th grade, the last year before high school in the district. Towards the end of the year, high school students come down to tell the 8th graders about student council, and a few weeks later, we have an election for president, vice president, secretary, and treasurer. This one student who was a total burnout ran for every position. My colleagues and I were all surprised and somewhat hopeful that the opportunity had sparked an interest in him. The day of the election, all of the 8th grade students are in the auditorium to hear the candidates give their speeches. They are supposed to be 30 seconds 1 minute long, and the candidates are encouraged to be serious and explain what they hope to accomplish if elected. This kid gets up on stage and gives his speech, which consists solely of screaming into the microphone for an entire minute. No one laughed. No one clapped. It was simultaneously hilarious, terrifying, awkward, and painful. The principal pulled him aside and told him that if he did it again during his second speech, he would get a detention. The kid nodded his head, and when his second speech rolled around, he screamed for about 4 seconds before the principal snatched the mic from him and sent him to the office. Ever read My Friend Dharma by John Durfback? Also, it's a move-in now. That's exactly what Dharma would have done in 8th grade. Don't get eaten. Not a teacher, but probably a teacher story. In middle school, all the girls I was hanging out with started talking about 69. I had no idea what it was and they refused to tell me when I asked. So I went up to one of the teachers and asked her what 69 was. She gave me this look and said, that is a conversation for your parents. The other girls wouldn't even tell me it was something sexual. So how was I to know not to ask the teacher? I had this happen at my school in grade 7. Someone was bugging a girl for not knowing 69 was, so she went to the teacher. He said that between 68 and 70 and also the IQ of the student, teasing her. I had a kid that made origami ducks. That's all he did all year. He even made one that could ejaculate. Had another kid who was bounced around between his uncles who beat him. He was put in my class because he punched the lady that was his teacher. I talked to him like a normal person, so he worked and became a B student. But it wasn't to last. He touched a girl's butt and fought her boyfriend, so they moved him to another class. There he didn't do shit but fuck off. One day he ended up stabbing himself up the nose with a pencil. Didn't hurt himself too bad, but it bled a whole lot. He even made one that could ejaculate. What? Do we need you fucks with ducks here? Listen. You're going to need to address this ejaculatory duck issue pretty soon. Early on in my career, students were doing a free write about their dream job. One boy wrote about how he wanted to be a rapper and how good he was at rapping and so on. The only problem was that he didn't know double consonants make soft vowel sounds, so he only used one P in rapper. It ended up being a long confession about his desire to be a rapper. 7th grade math teacher here. I could probably write a book with cringy moments I've experienced. Here a few. Had a student who went to the bathroom and came back and had a watermark or something on her butt. Her friend proceeded to scream, you have cum on your butt, in front of the whole class. I was disgusted. Ended up speaking with her outside and asking if she would say that to her grandmother, and she realized she had fucked up. This year had a student ask me multiple times if I would call him Big Daddy. During my first year teaching, one of my students said, "Miss, your pencil sharpness sucks." So I jokingly said, "Well, you suck." Not one of my brightest teaching moments. He then replied, "Well, you swallow." I was mortified. He was mortified and I told him to never speak to me like that again and prayed he never told his parents about the exchange. Just to name a few. Not a teacher, but once had a kid, sitting right fucking next to me, with his dick whipped out. I don't even know how long it was out for, but when I glanced over he was just sitting there staring at his meat. Then he whispered to himself, I didn't know they grow this fast, and then turns to a girl, sitting behind him, points at his meat and asks, is this long enough, Jenny? Haha, OMG, I forgot about this until now. We had a kid in my HS class who jerked off in front of the librarian a couple times. Literally had his dick in his hands while talking to her and she was completely oblivious. Well, I don't think he ever got in trouble for it anyway. Two guys doing oral sex in the bathroom in front of the sinks. They didn't even try and hide it. It was one of the biggest nightmares to deal with. What was I supposed to say? I turned around and walked out and yelled in after them to get out this instance. Then of course they went to the principal's office. To make matters worse, it was two students that came and got me. There was no keeping the cat in the bag on this one. They both ended up transferring to new schools. Not a teacher, but every year, the 8th grade class at my school would go on a whale watch. We all were informed that if we had not been on a boat before, we should take motion sickness medicine to help with seasickness, as the boat was not massive and it was an issue every year. Well, there were these three kids that I grew up with that were like the Three Stooges. Let's call them A, B and C. I decided to not take the medicine thinking it would be funny. We left on the boat, went out and saw a few whales. It was a good time. We started to make our way back after being out for a few hours, and as expected, Kid A started to not feel so hot. He complains to one of the chaperones and they tell him to go up to the open deck to get some fresh air. Kid B and C followed him up there, or started to egg him on at this point, telling him all sorts of fucked up stuff. Dude, picture this purple oozing vagina with ants crawling out of it. Imagine a poop-filled condom exploding on your face. You know, typical middle school boy stuff. Now this kid A is absolutely pale white but 100% reluctant to throw up, as there were quite a few kids up on deck at this point. Kid B, easily the most sick and twisted person I knew in my entire youth, is getting desperate to make his buddy a yak in front of everyone. So he did what any good friend would do and stuck his finger down his own throat and threw up all over Kid A's shoes. An ungodly amount of this red-orangey vomit. Instantly, Kid A fucking lost it and let out another bucket load of some white clam chowder-esque vomit. Kid C at this point was in tears, but Kid B didn't want him to feel left out, so he stuck his finger in Kid A's pile of chowder vomit and ate a glop. To which Kid C caved and added to the collage with his own brand of this brownish looking bile. At this point, all the teachers and chaperones panicked and were scrambling to get all of my classmates and I off the deck and into the cabin before we all lost it. And to make matters worse, the vomit proceeded to drift all over the deck with each swell and drip down over the edge onto the deck below. It was amazing. We would all watch out the window as we took a roll and a cup of puke would fall off each side of the boat, chumming the waters. They were so proud of each other on the bus ride home. I think they stopped whale watches for a few years after our class. Edit. Grammar. Edit. Thank you for the gold friend. Not the teacher, but a boy in my 10th grade class drew a swastika on my hat, then argued with the teacher as to why it wasn't offensive. His exact words were, "If it's not offensive to me, I don't get how it can be offensive." My teacher proceeded to lie down behind her desk for a few minutes after that conversation. I'm not a teacher, but this is something cringy that happened when I was in middle school. I was in science class and we were sending electrical charges through a pickle to show that there were ions in the pickle. The teacher had other vegetables and fruits and asked what we should do next with the electricity. This very awkward cringy kid that had zero social skills, but at the same time would try to be funny, pipes up and says loudly, "Let's set girl from our class on fire." The whole class goes silent and he does a very quiet and awkward "ha. Oh no." I worked at an international school in Shanghai. On my first day as a teacher, there was a small argument with a very awkward middle school boy, as most middle schoolers are, and a girl who sat in front of him. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw him reach down his pants, rub himself, and proceed to wipe his ball sweat on her back. I completely froze and acted like I didn't see it. I think it's exactly in that situation that you need to intervene and make him understand that's not okay. 7th grade girl laid on her back and put her legs behind her head to show everyone she could. Not a teacher, but in 6th grade gym class this autistic girl would go around every day and bend down a bit, stare at each person's crotch, shake her head and go no, and then move to the next person, like a visual crotch exam every day or something. It was weird. Not a teacher, but in middle school the one class had the desks arranged into 4x4 squares. My friends used to whip their dicks out under the desk and then everyone would look at it and judge it. I never understood why. This happened while I was on lunch duty a couple years back. One of our special ed kids was walking through the middle of the cafeteria to get into line when another boy said something to him he didn't like. The SA boy pulled his pants down to his ankles, fist in his hand, then slapped the other kid in the face. While all that was happening, the guy that started it was just staring in disbelief. I may have taken my time to get over there so another teacher could separate them first because I didn't want piss all over me. Got a call from my son's principal one day. It was actually my first day on a new job, which is irrelevant to the story, but it added to the stress level that I had to take the call while sitting in the car with my new boss. She tells me that my over the weekend while at his mother's, no rules over there, total autonomy. He sent a picture of his genitals over Snapchat to his girlfriend. In return, the girlfriend sent a pic of her bare chest. The GF was at a sleepover with 6 other girls who also saw the pic, and I'm sure they told everyone they knew. Immediately I am thinking he could be arrested for possessing or distributing child pornography. I ask what kind of trouble he is in and she says the school can't suspend him because it did not happen on school property. I then ask if law enforcement has been notified, to which she replies that the school resource officer was there with them. I asked again if he was in trouble and she tells me that they cannot suspend him from school. At this point, I am hotter than a blast furnace on the surface sun in the middle July. With my new boss sitting right next to me I shout, "Lady, do I need to call a fucking lawyer for my kid?" To which she replies, "No sir, we just wanted to let you know that the incident occurred." I get the concept behind the child prom thing, but it's sad to see 2 willing participants possibly get into severe trouble for something like that. Very lucky they didn't call the cops. I think this should be discussed in schools even if it's awkward. Not a teacher, but in 8th grade, a couple of my friends told a classmate to ask a very large female teacher what a fupa was. She didn't know, so she googled it. Kid proceeded to apologize repeatedly for an hour. He'll never live that down. I remember, back when I was in 7th grade, the 8th grade classes went on a class trip. Apparently 2 of them decided to bang each other in one of the hostel rooms, without locking it or doing anything to prevent them from getting caught. So of course, while they were in the middle of doing it, their teacher walked in. They were both sent home. The boy was expelled and the girl, whose name was Victoria, was known to the whole school as Vicky Ficky. Fick is the German word for fuck. Everyone knew that story, even the 5th graders. Of course she transferred to another school afterwards, but I've heard that even there, everyone knew her. The teacher who caught them retired a year later, before he reached the actual retirement age. I think he too was traumatized. Not a teacher, but I'm sure whoever my 6th grade teacher was probably cringed through most, if not all of it. We had a writing assignment about something. I honestly forget the topic, but not so long story even shorter. I came to class with about a 20-page Star Wars fanfic about Han Solo and Boba Fett fighting each other in very specific detail. I also read the entirety out it aloud. Some kids seemed kind of jazzed about it, but I then realized later it wasn't because I was the new Timothy Zahn. It was because I had eaten up probably 30 minutes of the class with what I imagine was my incoherent cheek mumblings, and they didn't have to read theirs that day. Another story from my awkward as fuck middle school years. I was once trying to impress a bunch of 8th grades as we waited for our parents to pick us up. So I told this joke I just had that day in the halls. What's the difference between a blonde and a helicopter? Not everyone's been in a helicopter. Needless to say, a teacher was hanging around close enough to catch the joke and added it to her personal collection. The first person she shared it with was my mom, as she of course came to pick me up before the other kids. The last super embarrassing middle school story I can remember was when my friends and I had gone full wrestling idiots with the height of WCW popularity. We were having all-day submission hold contests where you tried to make your friends tap out with your sweet finisher. Mine was called the Executioner. Baddest I know. So around 4th period literature my teacher had to walk out for a moment and I took the perfect time to slap on the Executioner on a friend. When I say perfect time, I mean my teacher pretty much came back instantly to see a middle schooler grabbing another middle schooler in what I could only describe as a version of a reverse arm bar mixed with the setup of a power bomb. It was even more embarrassing when I had to describe it to my baseball coach when she tried to ban me from playing in a game that day. Sorry if this was super long. I was just a walking cringe machine in middle school. I was enrolled in a Sunday school, Islamic, and one kid who thought he was cool raised his hand in front of everyone and asked, "Is jacking off allowed?" With the dumbest grin on his face. The class consisted of male and female high schoolers. Yikes. I'm gonna be so cool for this. They are all gonna be like, bro, I can't believe you said that, what a legend. Everyone's gonna laugh their asses off. Does it? Crickets. Different sort of school, but I taught in CRCs. I taught K-12 for kids with issues ranging from schizophrenia to gang violence to sexual violence to addiction. This one dude came into a very rough CRC which held a lot of gang-affiliated youth. He kept talking about his set and his crew running streets on the northwest side. Well, I lived on the northwest side, and that shit was the richest, most bourgeoisie place in the city. So I asked which neighborhood he was from, and he says, let's say, Pinacrest, which is the name of the condos across the street from me. So I say the road and ask if that's the road in his hood, and he's like, yeah, Woodbridge represent, yo. The next time he acted like an asshole in class. I asked to talk to him. I told him that I was from his hood, that I knew exactly how nice it was, how low the crime rate was, and what a charlatan he was being. I told him I was bluffing, that the next time he acted like a gangster in my class I was going to out him to the kids who had legit grown-up blood or crip, and that if I heard him say Juan's World one more time, I was gonna laugh my ass off and make fun of him. It worked. Edit. When his mommy finally got him, I used to see him walking home from school past my house all the time. Silly ass. Obligatory. I am a middle school teacher. Since it doesn't matter, I guess. I have seen some weird shit. We had a couple 7th graders having sex behind a dumpster during recess during a Wisconsin winter last year. My first year teaching, a 6th grader jacked off in class while I was teaching, in a Catholic school. Weird things like someone being called a slut on social media. So to combat that, she writes about having sex on the slide. Wow, I just realized how horny middle schoolers are. Not a teacher, but a classmate of mine needed to do a German presentation of some subject. He had weeks to learn it and it needed to be 15 minutes. But he was too lazy, so he didn't make a pee-pee or anything and just stood there in front of the class trying to speak in German. But he couldn't. He didn't know a word. He had German for 4 years now. It was so obvious that he didn't know shit. But the teacher wanted him to continue for the full 15 minutes. The whole class was silent and cringing for the most awkward 15 minutes of my school time. For your information, he did get a higher grade than most of the class, which were all way better prepared students. Obligatory, not the actual teacher. In my grade 7 math class, 2 friends and I would play card games if we finished our work before the period ended. One would often get loud and angry if he lost. One day, we were playing Crazy Eights, and I was winning. Angry kid didn't like that, and was gradually getting louder and more visibly agitated. I had a bit of a headache. So I sarcastically said I'd give him $50 if he made it through our game without yelling. But this kid didn't have anger issues, but had Asperger's, unbeknownst to us, and people with Asperger's often can't understand sarcasm and tone. The bell rang. We put the cards away, and he came up to me at the door. With a triumphant grin, he demanded his $50. Of course, I didn't actually have $50. I was 12, but I did have a few pennies in my wallet. So, I opened my wallet, jokingly pulled out a penny and dropped it into his outstretched hand. This kid lost it. He roared, "You're supposed to give me $50 fucking dollars, you piece of shit," in a voice that would rouse the dead, and whipped the penny at the back of my head as I bolted down the stairs. He then picked up the teacher's coffee cup off of her desk and threw it at us as we ran. And guess who got in trouble? The supervisor stuck her head out the door and angrily demanded my friend and I come back and walk out properly. And we did. All while Spurg's kid was angrily gibbering at us and hopping up and down while the teacher tried to calm him down. This is when my other friend and I started to think he may have issues, seeing as he just swore and smashed the teacher's coffee cup, and didn't get in trouble. He eventually learned how to deal with his anger, and we reconnected in high school and became great friends. So on the autism train, when I was in middle school, we had a kid in our grade who, now that I look back, was basically a teenage Butters from South Park. Like, put glasses on him. This kid was the spitting image. Now, the cringe comes in when I walk into the bathroom one day, and this kid is at the urinal. He has his pants around his ankles and is swinging his hips like he's hula hooping. To top it off, he's half singing "Woo, woo, the lighthouse is on fire." Deep, manly voice starts, "Don't worry guys, I'll put it out." I still do not know how I should appropriately handle a situation like that. I think my actual course of action involving leaving to go to a different restroom may have been the best idea. I teach middle school science at a small Catholic school. 6th grade is definitely the most awkward year for students. Had a strange student last year who was not the best in social situations. One day at lunch, this student pulls out an entire large cucumber and just starts chomping away. It looked very phallic. So when people around him started laughing, kid just started assaulting people with this giant dildo-like cucumber. Not a teacher, but during some sort of English class discussion, a girl suggested a skateboard to be included in the topic. I don't remember why. And a boy in the back just impulsively yells, "Oh yeah, bring on the skate." Yeah, that boy was me. I cringe every time I think about that, and it's been 6-7 years. Not a teacher, but when I was in middle school back in the day, the weird loner kid came to school with what looked like cum stains near the base of his shirt. It was early morning right before homeroom and some kid pointed it out. I don't know if it was actually semen, but we all just kind of assumed it because that was more dramatic, funny, gross. As soon as the teacher realized what was up, he escorted him out. I saw him back in third period with the same clothes, so who knows? It probably was cum tbh. He was a fucking weird kid. Semi-related story. I used to work on a cook's line in a restaurant. This dishwasher kid comes into work in a shirt with stains all over it. I asked him why he wore that shirt. I already knew what the stains were because it was obvious. He said it was his roommate's shirt because all his were dirty. I told him he needed to go home and change. He didn't want to, so I asked his roommate, he worked there too, why he let him wear the shirt. He said he didn't notice what shirt it was until they got to work. It was his cummy shirt he wiped up with after sex with his girlfriend and his jerk-off towel. The kid was mortified and left work. Didn't come back for a couple days. Edit. Ben, if you're on Reddit, what the hell? How you gonna put on some crusty, scratchy, beer-battered shirt and think, yay, I can wear this for the next 9 hours? Middle schooler here. A kid tried to do a flying karate kick at someone and they just turned around and punched him and he started to cry. I'm not a teacher, but this kid in my class stapled 2 of his fingers together. Actually, that's more of a stupid thing to do than awkward cringy. If you think that's bad, I used to be prison guard. We had a dude staple his nutsack to a table on a bet for 50c bag of chips. Not a teacher, but pretty much everything middle school kids do is cringy or awkward because they lack a lot of self-awareness. Not a teacher. When I was in middle school, a teacher caught a girl giving a BJ to her BF at the time. Fun at parties. That girl was my front neighbor. I heard the things her parents said. Oh lord, she need Jesus. The title asks for teachers with stories about middle school, and you answered with a story about your friend messing with you in college. Nice.